calling the meeting to order. We need a motion to adopt the agenda for today.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. I also need a motion for the approval of the minutes from February 21st, if you had a chance to read those.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. All right, well, this is an opportunity for the public to comment on any public matter that is not on the agenda of the meeting and is within the jurisdiction of the Teachers Retirement Board. However, the board may not take action on any issues raised unless it's included on the agenda and public comment has been allowed. If issues are raised that would require board action, the issue would need to be included on the agenda for a future meeting. Public matter does not include disability applications or contested cases and other adjudicative proceedings. And we don't have any public in the room right now. Or online, John? Okay, all right. So we're gonna move on to our discussion items, which is the Executive Director's Report. I'm gonna let Sean take over.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to just try to share my screen. Just a second. Look across the way here.
Oh,
Do that.
am I
You're
bringing
good.
your? I'm looking behind you and you're looking
I know
behind me.
Okay, screen share. Okay, so Dan and Dee, can you see the agenda right now? Is that up on your
Yes.
screen?
Yes.
All right, great. I will jump to the Executive Director's Report. So in your packet, I did include a copy of the placeholders that I have to submit on our behalf to the Governor's Office for proposed legislation. And of course, at this point in time, the only two that we have are our regular tax qualification bill, our GR bill, general revisions bill, which we've always just sort of referenced that as our housekeeping bill, as well as the university system supplemental contribution bill. In statute, the board is supposed to periodically advise the legislature on whether or not the supplemental contribution rate to TRS on behalf of the university system is sufficient or not. It is not sufficient, so we bring a bill every 2 years to increase that contribution rate. And I think, the statute implies that we would do that, so I think we should continue to do that. So those are the only two things that are on my radar at this point in time. The housekeeping bill, I mean, we'll see if, what that looks like. If it's only a couple of things and they're things that obviously we're living without today, it may be a good session to just keep our head down and go and play defense on the things that they're trying to do. If there are some housekeeping items that we think we have to have, then certainly we'll just move forward with those like always. That's the only two items that I have currently. I mean, obviously, if the board feels strongly about something that they think we need to explore, that would be in addition to these two bills, we certainly can do that, but I don't know that that's the case.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Dee?
I'm wondering, Sean, if the interim committee has done any more on the bill that was proposed last session as far as planning to do anything with amortization or any of those things.
Yeah, so I'm going to get to that here in just a second, a third part of this update. But yes, I mean, they are looking, they're looking at various items. I don't know for sure that anything is going to come out of the SAVA committee as far as trying to move us toward layered amortization. They really have to fix what they put in place last time, because they made layered amortization. It's kind of a modified layered amortization because they put a cap on how much you could increase the contribution, but they did not put a cap on how much you could decrease the contribution. And just sort of the luck of the draw, the way things are looking for those safety systems as of this this coming July 1, there's a really good chance that they're gonna go down, they're gonna reduce that contribution rate by a couple percentage points. But then in subsequent years, they can only increase it up to 0.5% per year. So it's gonna be a problem. Because we know we have actuarial losses coming, we have the same amount of actuarial loss, but we are gonna drop off that big gain from 2021 after this next year. So, you can just see the writing's on the board. Like, they're gonna end up reducing the contribution rate because that's what says you should do under the layered amortization. But then the following year, when they need to go back up 2.5%, they're only gonna be able to go up 0.5%. So it's gonna leave a hole that needs to be fixed. So they definitely need to iron out the mechanics of that, I think, before they even attempt to do anything with the two large systems.
Thank you.
On House Bill 117, will we get a report back, or will we do a report based on how we think that is playing out as far as the retirees being able to come back for 3 years?
So they put a sunset date on those provisions, so they'll sunset in 2027. I always do a report on the 19-20-732 working retirees, which are the ones that work with no limit on how much they earn. It's required in statute that I present that report to the legislature. And that really hasn't changed much. It's stayed pretty much the same as it has been the last couple of years. As far as the 49% allowable earnings and the 120-day break in service, we'll certainly look at whether there's any, trends or anything really changed, but we're gonna need to let that it's gonna not really be this year, it'll be in a couple of years.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll definitely review that. And then the board will have the opportunity to weigh in and just, to decide if they want to continue at 49% and 120, or should we go back to the way it was prior?
Which was 1/3.
1/3 and 150 calendar days.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then removing administrators again from it. Wasn't that also part of that bill?
So that one I don't believe sunsets. It was part of that bill, but we added, the TRS Board's request that added not administrators, but superintendents specifically back into that 732. And I don't believe that one sunsets. I think that one stays.
Okay.
The other two provisions do sunset.
Director Graham, this is Member Chamberlain.
Yes.
Yes, on the MOS contributions, do we have any capacity to have you testify in front of the Congress regarding the actuarial destruction that has occurred in terms of their underpayment for so many years? What the effect would have been up to this date?
Yes, the answer is yes. So I do that when I go up and introduce the bill. So at least every session, it will have an initial hearing, which is what's happened for the last 5 sessions. We have the initial hearing in either state admin or Senate admin, where all that comes out. It's in the fiscal note, it's in my testimony. But in addition to that, here next week, actually, I jump to the legislative update. Next week, that SJ4 pension committee, I'm on their agenda to present on the MUSRP supplemental contribution. So we're going to walk through the whole history of, how it was set up initially, how it changed over time, and what that unfunded liability looks like. And, there's really, at the 4.72%, all of TRS's liabilities will be paid off is the only way that this ever gets paid off. The 4.72% doesn't pay for the interest on the liability they have. That, or we need 10 years of 20% returns in a row, something like that would also pay it off. But
and in addition, isn't it true that because of that underpayment of their liability, we could be, our whole system could be more under scrutiny in terms of a justification to get rid of the defined benefit program in the long run?
I don't know if I understood the question. I guess I think I know what you're getting at. So their portion, The MUS unfunded liability is part of our 24-year amortization period, our overall unfunded liability. So
Right.
yes, you're correct. If they were paying what they're supposed to, we would amortize in less time than we currently do, and we would be funded at a higher level than we currently are.
And one final question on that. Have you received any pushback from other school districts or other teachers that understand this problem and recognize that they are the ones that are actually gaining a liability as a
Not
result of this underpayment?
Yeah, not specifically from any individual school district or member. Their MFPE will, in their testimony, sometimes will mention that. Certainly, I talk about it when I present as well, but nobody has really grabbed a hold of that and sort of, pounded their fists too hard on the table that they're covering their liability.
Do you think that's primarily a result of them being unaware?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, the other side of the coin on that is the state of Montana is kicking in about $43 million a year, $44 million a year, and if somebody wanted to argue it, they could claim that covers it. But it's never been tagged for that.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, Dan, too, to your point, as much as this is a huge burden on our system, it also allows us the best example that we have to keep our system the way that it is. Because this liability never goes away. And we can close this down tomorrow, and yet the state of Montana will probably go under because, you just can't, it's never going away. This burden is here forever. We're a contract law state. We're not going anywhere. So.
Agreed. I would only characterize it as a responsibility rather than a burden.
I agree. That's a better word. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back up and get back in order here a little bit. So unless the board has any issues with the two placeholders I have out there, then I had to submit them already, but certainly I could pull one back if I needed to. Otherwise, we'll just continue as planned with
Yeah,
that.
when would we decide if we wanted to forego the housekeeping bill this year?
I just won't submit anything. We won't actually have it introduced.
Okay.
But at least this way we have that placeholder with the governor's office, so we don't get, they don't come back and say, no, you can't do that. Which there's always other ways to get a bill introduced rather than through the SABA committee, but you have to have a legislator do it 100% on your behalf, so. Okay, so then moving on to item B, the mass meetings. So at the time I wrote this, I hadn't yet been to Kalispell, but I did go there last week and got stopped along Salmon Lake for 25 minutes going up. So those are all done. It's really funny that it did not dawn on me until about 3 weeks ago that I've been missing Western Mass on this list the entire time. And the reason for it is kind of embarrassing. I had this sheet of paper that I got from Rob Watson, all the new Mass presidents and their contact info, and Western Mass was on the back side of that page. So I unintentionally never scheduled anything with them, but I have since remedied that. The only thing is I won't go meet with them until either be September or October, but I will go there next fall. So that will wrap up my appearance at all 9 at that point, Mass meetings. And like I said in my comments, if you had a chance to read it, overall, superintendent's group seems to be pleased with the things that we did last session to try to help them fill their vacant spots. I mean, they do also seem to understand that that's not really the fix. It's a Band-Aid. I mean, it helps them get by. It's an immediate sort of help, but it doesn't do anything to sort of help with their longer term problem of recruiting teachers and having new teachers go into the profession. So that seems to be known by everyone involved, but they do appreciate the work that the board did on their behalf last session. Staffing update. So we did hire our 2 retired payroll benefit specialists that were vacant. Hayes Bartriff and Brittany Black were both hired. And like I wrote there, Hayes has a background in communications. In fact, he's even a sports journalist here for the local news at some point, or at some times, not always, but he does do some of that. And then Brittany came from public health, and she's got over 15 years of experience. They're both doing great. They've both been on staff now for a couple of weeks, and they're training with Natalie. And she says they're doing a good job for her, and so we're looking forward to having them on board. And then we did lose Robert left. He was one of our 2 imaging techs, and he didn't leave to just go to a different job in another state agency. Him and his family actually are moving to Minnesota, so there wasn't much we could do to prevent that. Okay, and then item 3, I mean, we already talked a little bit, or I shouldn't say, but we've talked about some of the things that the SJ4 Pension Committee is working on. I provided you an update of the various items they looked at their last meeting, and I just sort of gave you an update of what I will be presenting on next week. So in addition to the MUSRP supplemental history, I also will be talking to our member survey that Darla did for us last fall. One of the things that committee wants to look at is the recruitment and retention, whether defined benefit plans help with recruitment and retention. And I think our member survey certainly tells the story that at least for teachers, they do value that defined benefit. So I'll likely answer some questions about that as well. Okay, are there any other questions, Madam Chair or members of the board?
No.
I think we got a little ahead of ourselves when we were asking questions, so.
That's all right. Yeah, and then in your packet, I had put a copy of the memo we get from the budget director about those legislative proposals and the deadlines, just so you're aware that these are some of the things that go on. And then the copy, obviously, of the 2 placeholders, which they really don't have much information in there at this point.
All right, this is a time for public comment, but there are no public of it present. Administrative business, then we will move on to our investment report.
Sure. Yeah, we had a Board of Investments meeting last month. It was a really good meeting. We went through a whole lot of things. A couple of the highlights. Dan decided, I guess the board and Dan decided last year that we were going to try to find some savings in our administrative costs. And the goal was to find about $9 million. And thus far, they have found 25 million.
Oh my gosh.
So that will increase the dividend back to us and the other plans and the other parts of the state that gets charged by the Board of Investments to manage our funds. So that's pretty cool. Some of it was a position or 2 that were eliminated. A big chunk of it is just renegotiating some contracts, specifically some contracts with the state. So they were being, I won't say overcharged, but there was higher than probably necessary expense for some of the things that the state does that were based on revenue versus number or something like that. So they did a really, really good job with that. And I'm pretty excited to see that. I mean, it doesn't amount to it. It's not a huge percentage, but that's a big dollar amount of savings. So that was pretty cool to see. We spent a lot of time talking about the benchmarks that we use and got to go into detail on those. I know a few years ago, there had been some shuffling around in benchmarks. It was a new CIO that had changed some things. What they're trying to do now is to keep those as consistent as possible. Because if you want to look at things over a long period of time, maintaining your benchmarks just makes a lot of sense. You're not apples to apples if you keep changing the measuring stick. So we think we're in a pretty good spot for those. The one area that's really hard to try to measure is the private investments, because there's really not good benchmarks out there. So they've settled on using small cap public equity. And so it's not a perfect fit, but there's just nothing better. That's the one where if there was something better, it'd be interesting to see if we could figure it out, but there really isn't. So sometimes our performance is gonna lag the public markets because private markets reprice more slowly. So there is a little bit of that going on, but as far as the rest of them, I think we're all pretty comfortable with what they are. We had RBK in, who's our consultant, and we talked a lot about their capital market assumptions going forward. They look out 10 years plus on those. And it's a little depressing to look at those, so I don't know if anyone has looked at the report, but most of their assumptions for almost every asset class are below our actuarial hurdle. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in trouble. Again, I'll mention the private investments. We've done a lot better than our benchmarks on a lot of different areas. And because we're able to move between them, and there's volatility in the market, there is lots of opportunity for us to do better. That does help us figure out maybe where to stress or add a little bit of allocation, and we've kind of done that. We don't ever, nobody's correct on those. Every big company in the country does them, every big Wall Street firm does them, and nobody's ever right. So you don't put a lot of stock into them, but it does give you an idea of where there might be some opportunity. So that's kind of what we use them for. The last thing I'll mention, we talked about the cost of especially our public equity, and it's incredibly low. There's been lots of discussion about why we use the company we use, BlackRock. There's been some bad publicity, but we're not going to find a better deal. And at the end of the day, if we're asking them to mimic the market, and they mimic the market for cheaper than anyone else can do, we're doing our fiduciary duty for our funds. So I think we're going to stick with those guys. And I guess the other issue about that people had was, for a while, everyone thought that we were allowing them to vote our proxies on all of these different stocks. We're not. We have a third-party service that does that. And at the end of the day, the voting is about what's best for the shareholders, which is us. It has nothing to do with any other political ideology. It's just what's best for the shareholders at the end of the day. So we're pretty comfortable with that too. I think that was it. I mean, obviously kind of a rough April. May's been better. We're still coming off of a bad year in 22. The tail end of 23 was, at least the fourth quarter and the first quarter of this year were really good. So I think we're under year to date a little bit, but like Sean said, we got a pretty good chance of getting there.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I do, Madam Chair.
Okay, Dee?
Dan, I'm wondering if the millions that you talked about in savings that are now going to be returned to all of us who use the Board of Investments, was that initiated by the board, or was it initiated after legislative scrutiny?
I think it was just us. I mean, I think you're always trying to be as efficient as possible, but I actually think maybe there was an inkling that there might be some scrutiny, and we thought, let's get ahead of it. That's kind of how Dan operates over there. So, yeah.
Because I had heard via the grapevine that was happening, and I'm glad that the board acted quickly and to the best benefit of all of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible what they're able to do for the incredibly low cost they do it. I mean, I'm in the industry and I know what it costs to manage money, and we're doing it right at the Board of Investments. It's incredibly cheap for the returns that are being provided. So, but every little bit helps, and this is a cool thing that we were able to do.
And I have one more question, Madam Chair. Dan, was there any discussion I saw on one of my national informational bulletins that the president was targeting some pension systems not to use some kind of private equity in a certain way? Was there a discussion of that at the Board of Investment?
I don't remember anything specific to that. If you could give me more detail on that, I'll certainly have them address it.
I will, thank you.
Yeah, just shoot me an email and we'll take a look at it, absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? That's a great report, thank you. The legislative audit report. Read it.
Yeah, cover to cover. All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, not much to speak of on the legislative audit this year. We had an unmodified opinion for fiscal year '23 with no recommendations and no findings. So, obviously there's, for the auditors, there's not a lot to, go over for them. There is good information in here. If anyone has any questions, feel free. If that's it.
So many questions, so many questions.
Hopefully we can continue that streak.
That's awesome, and congratulations, it's appreciated.
So on page 30 in the packet is the, balance sheet. These are as of March 31st, even though the April ones are out obviously now, in comparison to last year. So our total, our total assets are a little over $5 billion. I think we ended last year at like 4.9, so we're up, about $100 million overall. As of March 31st of last year, we were only at like 4.7, but we had a really strong April, May, June, kind of the end of last fiscal year to kind of bring us up to just over the actuarial return, so which was nice. Any questions on the balance sheet? There's, again, the vast majority of the difference here is just going to be the investments. There's not a huge, in particular category. I guess the intangible assets there, which are zero, that kind of jumps out at you because we did fully amortize the M-Trust projects now. So you'll see that at zero going forward unless we make a big investment into intangible assets. The fund balance statement on page 31, our total revenue, that's where that, we're at 4.9, now we're at a little over 5 billion. That's because of the 100 million there in the revenue, which mostly comes from our investment revenue, of course. Everything else is pretty much in line. Our contributions will continue to, go up year over year slightly, as well as our benefit payments will continue to increase year over year. And then, I guess I'd just add that, as of March, we did have like a 7.8% return. And I think as of April, it was more like 5.6%, at fiscal year to date. So that revenue, I think as of April is closer to like 70 million, so it's gone down slightly. Just a rough April basically, but as Member Trost mentioned that, of course, the returns this month have been a little stronger. So on the page 32 that's just our revenue and expenses by type. Not a huge, again, the investment appreciation is the big difference. That's where that 100 million is coming from. And on the expense side, it's as you can see the bottom line there, it's very similar to what we spent last year. Some categories are up, some are down, but if you have any questions, feel free. Moving on to the operating budget. Again, these are as of March 31st. expecting some vacancy savings in personal services because of our open positions that we've had kind of throughout the year, parts of the year, somewhere in the 50 to 75,000 range in the personal services, and then, you know, somewhere in the 75 to 125 maybe range in the operating. So I'm kind of expecting like a, you know, total surplus for the year of somewhere between 100 and 200,000. We do have always this audit fees, which, you know, kind of bumps everything up because they're budgeted for 2 years. So whatever we have in a surplus in that category will carry over to next year. And, you know, so that could be somewhere around 100,000 that will carry over in budget surplus. So really, it's going to look like we have a, you know, $200,000 to $300,000 surplus, but a large chunk of that is going to be that those audit fees.
That we pay to the state?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right here, the
I just
legislative
wasn't
audit
sure.
division. Yeah.
Okay.
And they do 2 separate audits for us each year. You know, they do the financial audit and then the GASB 68 audit that for all the net pension liabilities for all of our employers. So that schedule, and it's rather involved, but yeah, those fees have gone up significantly. The next page is just one of our major budget categories, the contracted services. The biggest standouts here are our legal fees. We've spent actually 0 so far, knock on wood, which is unusual. But yeah, we haven't spent any of that budget, even though they can add up very quickly if we do have to spend some. And then our IT, so with the M-Trust project, we budget about 95,000 for or close to 100,000 for the Alfred Mungsgaard and Associates to do continued upgrades to the system, and we haven't spent as much of that. So that's kind of where the biggest categories of savings are coming from, and then of course the audit fees also. So. And we don't have any delinquent agencies on page 35. So that means all of our employers are getting their monthly reports into us in a timely fashion. We still have our auditor finding certain errors and things, but overall that's a good sign that we don't have any delinquent agencies right now. So, and that's all I have for
Madam Chair,
Yes, Steve.
with the delinquent agency report, because there are none, is that a direct influence from hiring somebody who has been on top of that whole situation for the last year?
We are on top of that always. We have a report that runs, every month. The reports are due. So if you're talking about, the April report, it's due to us by May 15th. And so shortly after the 15th of each month, I, run a delinquent agency report, and I send out a email to all those employers that are, haven't got their report in. Almost every month, there's some people, there's some schools on there. It could be anywhere from 10 to 15 employers that haven't got their report in by the 15th. And then there's follow-up with another email shortly after, if, I kind of keep monitoring those reports. And eventually, by the 25th or so of the month, I'll be making phone calls. And we have gotten to points at times where we've had to, get the superintendents involved and even Sean, if they're months behind, but that's usually has to do with an extreme situation at that particular employer, like, maybe they lost their superintendent or, had a bunch of staff turnover and, so.
Thank you.
We haven't had a situation in the last, it's really important that they get all their reports in for the fiscal year. So even if they end up a couple months behind, we haven't had a situation where we haven't got all the reports in for the fiscal year for many years, 4 or 5 years in a row now, so.
So
Thank you.
you said that they audit, so what happens when you find too much or not enough was put in, does that just get corrected?
Yeah, so it depends on which way it is. If they've over-reported, we do an adjustment and basically pay that money back to the schools. We have different ways of doing that. And if they've under-reported, then it ends up in a service purchase buyback, like a service not reported buyback.
Okay.
Where that has to go through active membership, and they create those buybacks, and then the school is responsible for those payments to us. We have had situations where, if it was a huge report, we can do an adjustment also on that and not charge them the interest, but it's very infrequent, that we find a major error like that, so.
Okay.
Any other questions for Noah?
I don't think so. Am I presenting the year, or is this?
No, so we go to the personnel committee report.
Yeah, there was just some STIP stuff in here. I didn't know if we needed.
That's action item down.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah,
Oh, all
I'll
right.
speak to that.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so we are on to the Personnel Committee report, which was myself and Elliot Crump. And we met with Jim Cairns this week to go through Sean's performance appraisal. And then we were meeting this morning before the meeting at 7:30 to go over it with Sean as well. We use the strategic plan to go through this with Sean and use a performance rating of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You all had a chance to fill this out as board members. I know the first time doing it, it's like you have no idea what to do. And Elliot made a really good point. He said, it's really hard for me to see a 5 being like, because 3 is really good, 4 is really, really good, and 5 is really, 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 really good. That's a really hard thing to do. So hopefully this will get easier. And we actually even spoke to Jim a little bit about, maybe redesigning that or something like that. But Sean always does very well in his performance appraisals. Well above standards. He's always beyond the 4. I'll start with the strategic plan implementation. That is what really drives the work of the board. And so every other August, we sat down and we set out our strategic plan for the next 2 years. Sean is a big part of that. Jim Cairns helps us to just put it down on paper, set goals, all of those things. And then it's what drives what the board is working on and what Sean reports to us besides the day-to-day work. I won't say minutia, but for us, we don't know what's going on in that part. We do know what's going on in the strategic plan. And so Sean does very well with that. It was a very high rating, and we just feel like we're always apprised of what's going on. Do you want to talk to the?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
This is Dan Chamberlain. I have one question. Now that we know that Sean left out the West in his meetings, can we go back and readjust our appraisal on administrative
Yes.
efficiency?
Novice.
Hey, it's still calendar year 2024 in the fall, so I'll be all right.
All right, it might require a downgrade.
Well, yeah, that's the networking and outreach we did talk about him going out and meeting with all of the superintendents. Thought that was a really valuable thing. So getting all of that taken care of, except for the one, which we're going to take care of in
And
September.
Elliot actually caught that. He was like, where, so one is missing. There's
There's only-
9 of
only
these.
8. Where's Missoula? If you miss Missoula, I'm okay with that. That's, we should get over there and talk with them. So, really good on the networking and outreach and keeping us informed of all those things and making sure that you're getting out and talking with members and getting that information out to them. 4.5, really valuable.
Yep. And the third one is the supervision piece to this. And that, again, that is, we kind of rely upon the surveys of the staff members. And we had 11 staff members fill that out. So it's not, Sean rates himself, the staff members rate, and then we rate him as well. But a lot of that kind of stuff is hard for us to see. We definitely see his leadership. We see his innovation. We see certain things like that, but we don't see the day-to-day. So we talk to him about those types of things. And again, that is is above a 4 as well.
And then I think the last category here is the legislature. I had the opportunity to see Sean before I was on this board, speaking on behalf of TRS and advocating for bills. House Bill 117 is the one that I had the opportunity to see him interacting and just to really, he advocates for us well. The legislators respect him, and I think the bill came out the way the TRS expected it to come out. And so I think he does a really great job in that realm, maintaining those relationships, again, really high, 4.6 in the evaluation process. So keep up the good work in that realm.
Yeah, those are the areas that we go through with Sean, and then we have no recommendations for specific improvements. We're going to sit down with Jim, and he's going to sit down with Jim and just set it up for next year too, because each year we're looking at different things. We brought up a few things to add for Jim or take out. And I just wanted to thank Sean, though, for his 10 years of service with TRS, which is amazing. And just know that he is very well respected and very appreciated by all of us at the board. So,
You know, Carrie, I would second that. Sean is really our face in the public. We can't be at all these meetings, certainly, and he's well spoken at the hearings, and he does promote the mission and does it well. I think he does an excellent job.
thank you, Dee. Any other comments?
Both do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, thank you. This is always my least favorite part of these meetings. But yes.
Pat on the back.
Yeah, right.
Good job.
But thank you.
Sorry, it doesn't include a 10% raise, but that's how it goes some days.
Yeah, exactly. If I were in charge, Dee, everybody'd get one. It's not my money. I'm
Some of it
kidding.
is.
Some of it's very, very small amount. Just kidding. All right, so then we're on to the budget committee report. And that is Dan Chamberlain and Brian.
Yes, so I guess question for the whole board, do we want to walk through the budget request at this time, or do we just want Dan Chamberlain and Brian to give us the update first, and then we'll walk through it when we get to it as an action item? It's completely up to however you guys want to do it.
I think give us the update and then walk through it when it's an action item so that we know exactly what we're voting on. Does that work?
Okay.
Does everybody have it in front of them?
It is it in here?
Yeah, it's
Page.
Have it all scoped out earlier.
yeah, I'm trying to find it.
Right here.
64, 63?
Oh, 62, starting at 62. I
Yep.
didn't see that number.
If he wants to start, or so we met online.
I'd be happy to.
All right.
In our meeting of a few weeks ago, we went through this line item by line item. The two major takeaways is there are a few positions that have seen some escalation in costs, primarily due to overall inflation, software programs, administrative details. But the general conclusion, the one thought that I think is most relevant, is at the very bottom of the report. If we could skip down to that, just really quickly. In spite of those inflationary measures and some increasing costs, still at the very bottom line, the administrative expense percentage is still holding in there at roughly 0.75%, 0.7688, which is half of our dictate of 1.5%. And that number has remained relatively consistent for the nearly 10 years that I've been on this board. And that is a tremendous testament to the systematic administrative expertise that Nolan and Sean have added to this teacher's retirement plan.
Yeah, I would second that. Just my first meeting with a budget that looks like this. I mean, it's not like my budget at home, obviously. It was very good. Nolan was good at explaining when I asked some questions. I was surprised myself at the IT cost coming from that world of what actually is being run. But like you said, in learning and researching some of this, all of these expenses are, when it falls into that. I didn't realize it was legislative, it can only be to a certain amount. So that was a big learn for me that I can't go over. So for my first experience, it's a lot to understand, but it looks good to me.
I'm sure there will be a lot of questions, or maybe not, on the budget. I mean, I feel like we do a good job of, as a committee, looking through this, you know, so that everyone doesn't have to go through the minute details of it. We trust that you guys are going through that. We know Nolan and Sean are well on top of our budgets. We see them every meeting. We look through to where we're at. So if you have any other questions or anything specific to ask, feel free to do that now. We can also ask those questions when we go to vote on this, because it is an action item in our May meeting.
I thought it was mildly disappointing that we did not utilize nearly the budget that was allocated for travel, meaning that I'm really serious about this, and I'm partly to fault. But I think we need to take advantage of that allocation and continue as a board to be educated when the opportunity arises.
I agree with you. It's something that you can't get anywhere else. I mean, our training it happens sitting here at a board meeting, but the board meeting lasts for a half of a day. When you're sitting with other people who do what you do and do things that you don't do, and you're talking and you're learning what these things are, I would highly suggest that if you have a chance to go to this summer to the board or the trustee meetings, or next fall to NCTR, that you do. I mean, we pay for everything. It is hard to get away, and that as a teacher, you know, I was gone last year to San Diego, and then I went into New York to another thing, and it's a lot to be gone for. But if you can, we would highly recommend it.
Is there a place where you can see where those are, like a website?
Yes, yeah. In fact, I'm gonna go over, as part of our action items, we're gonna talk about the NCTR trustee workshop, as well as the annual conference. And so if you go to just nctr.org, you can look at them yourselves. Yesterday I saw that they have the preliminary agenda.
She just set it out. She just sent that out
for the trustee workshop, so I printed a copy of that. But I was planning to talk about it here a little bit later.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're all right.
No, it's a good question though.
The only other thing I would say about travel, just in general, so we're looking at, I just finally got there now. You know, this 3,000 for employee travel is going to be much, much closer to 14. Because a lot of our travel happens in June. So like I have an NCTR directors meeting in June. I believe Denise,
Napa's
in June, and GFOA was in May, right? May, June, and then
Yeah.
Prism, John just went to Prism. So we're gonna have a lot more employee expenses, and I know Dan Chamberlain was talking more specifically to board member travel. And obviously we do budget for you all to attend those meetings, and we'll talk about it later, so I don't want to need to beat a dead horse here, but it is, the employee part of that will be a lot closer to what we budgeted by the time we close out the year.
All right. Well, we'll just move on then, since this was just a discussion item and it is coming back up again to vote in an action item. The next one is the PRISM, the verbal report from John. PRISM conference.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. I attended the PRISM conference in Austin, Texas in, I guess it was late April. I'm getting old. It was not very long ago. And it was a good meeting, good conference. Probably real similar to the conferences you guys all attended. It was a lot of content in just a very short period of time. Key takeaways this year were systems focusing more and more on online services, same situation we find ourselves in, and then cybersecurity and risk mitigation and minimization. So as we're embarking on increasing online services here at TRS, I got a lot of really good information from a number of systems that presented at PRISM this year and reached out to a number of them while I was there, and then after I got back. We actually have a meeting scheduled on Monday with one of the Texas pension systems that's gone almost fully digital, and who are heavily leveraging DocuSign, which is something that we're looking to do as well. They're going to give us a demonstration and presentation on how they're utilizing DocuSign for online services. So that's going to be beneficial for us. I've also reached out to two other systems, one in Nevada and one in Texas, that have, within the last few years, migrated their source code management systems from a legacy system into Git, which is one of our action items for IT this year, is to actually move from Subversion to Git for our source code management. So getting some lessons learned and documentation from those two systems after they've transitioned, just to help minimize impact our system as we go through a real similar process. So a real benefit, I think, Member Chamberlain mentioned that actually being present at those meetings is, you learn a lot from being around peers, and I feel the same way, is that by going to the PRISM conference, is that there's definitely takeaways I can come back and apply here at TRS. So I appreciate the opportunity to go. Thank you very much for giving me that opportunity, and hopefully you'll be able to put some of that stuff I learned into practice right away here at Teachers Retirement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions?
I wanted you to give us each copy.
Sean told me not to.
Crazy.
I would have loved it.
You would like it.
I would love it.
Brian would love it.
I learned something too.
Yeah.
So that when they say it talks about cybersecurity, is the two-factor authentication thing becoming more prevalent, or?
It is a two-factor, and then some of the other security measures that are available is that two-factor authentication is now more of one of the tools available, and I think that's an approach Teachers Retirement's looking at. We have two-factor for our members accessing our online portal, but as we look to embark on additional financial online services, it's engaging other factors of authentication and identification, which DocuSign is one of that we're going to look at, knowledge-based authentication, physical ID verification, which is a service that DocuSign offers that we've actually have budgeted for the next fiscal year, is to consume a service from DocuSign that would allow a person to take a selfie and a picture of their driver's license and have that third-party vendor DocuSign actually do some ID verification based on that, to give us a higher level of confidence that the person that we're talking to online is actually who they say they are. So it seems that that type of enhanced security, and then fraud prevention is the biggest thing, is looking at what's going on, or who's accessing the system, metrics on what type of behavior is happening, frequency of logging in, but looking at ways to help mitigate or detect fraud that's happening, because as we all know, systems all over the world they get vulnerabilities, get found, they get infiltrated, and the idea is how do we stay do as good of a job as we can to minimize that risk and impact to our systems.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Hey, John, could DocuSign take the place? I know we had talked about remote notary at one point. Are there still a lot of documents that have to be notarized, or could DocuSign maybe take the place of those as well?
I think the TRS management team and the M-Trust steering committee both actively asking those questions and trying to determine what types of transactions DocuSign could replace for the requirement of a notarization. And there's multiple ramifications there. One is there a legal requirement that necessitates notarization? And if not, is the DocuSign signed document sufficient for our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're confident with that? And then that's one of the additional services DocuSign offers, is that ID verification on top of their DocuSign document. So we'd send the DocuSign envelope to the member, and as part of that signing process, there would be ID verification. And that's one of the services we're looking at standing up in front of financial transactions, maybe a withdrawal application or a retirement application, because that's one of the things we have in the works. But yeah, so the answer is yes, I think DocuSign can replace that, but I think we need to make a determination of which services have to have notarization stood up in front of them and which ones can have an alternate format that gives us the same confidence that the person who's performing the transaction is who they say they are.
Well, thank you, John. Any
You're
other?
welcome. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
All right. The next thing, just as a discussion item, is our tentative meeting dates. I will make sure that we have that at the end, but our next one for sure, August 2nd. Check your schedules and see if that works. August 2nd does not work super well for me. I have family in town. The next week would be better for me.
August 9th. That's my anniversary.
Right, and we could do any day that week since it's summer.
Yeah.
I'd prefer not a Friday.
I mean, I could bring a plus one, but she's gonna have to wait in the lobby.
Yeah, she could be our public.
No, I don't think you
I'm
want
sure
to.
she'd be so entertained.
She asked questions.
Entertained. It doesn't matter. I mean, I could always do it from afar too or something. I mean, but I
No, either one of those dates will work for me.
What day of that week are you?
any day of the next week I could do. I really could. The family leaves the 3rd and the 4th, so.
I might be able to make the 9th that following week, otherwise I'm probably going to be online.
I think I can do most of those days.
How about you, Dee and Dan?
I'm comfortable with the 2nd or any of the early days of the following week. We're leaving on the 9th to go to Europe for 5 weeks, which I scheduled on purpose right between these two meetings.
Good job.
You know, you tell me the date and it'll work.
The 8th,
The 8th?
I would have to be out of here by noon, but we usually are
Yeah.
anyways, so.
Do the 8th?
I will not be here. I will not be online either.
Okay. What about, Dan said early that week would be better for him. What about the 5th or the 6th?
I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
I could,
Yeah, well, and you know, you guys could do the 2nd and I could just do online too. I don't want to drive all the way to Helena and with my family.
No, it's whatever works for most of you.
Harry, if you're gonna be online, if you would prefer, if it's easier, I'll commit to being there in person on the 2nd. I could even run the meeting.
Okay. That'd be great if everybody can do that.
Okay.
Okay,
The 2nd?
Perfect.
second.
yep, that's good.
Okay.
And then the other ones to just put on your, October 4th is typically when we need to set in stone. Put that on your calendar because our actuaries will be in town. And then December 6th. December 6th would be the next one. So that's just a put it out there kind of thing. All right, this is another time for public comment, and there isn't public, so we'll move on to our action items.
Yes, so if you would like, I'll kind of give just a brief overview. So every May, if we're moving on to item I there, which is set the interest rate credited to member accounts. Each May, the board will set the interest rate that accrues on member contributions for the following fiscal year. Typically, we look at what the monthly STIP has been doing, as well as what the sort of the average annual STIP has been doing. And so I will pull up those two charts.
36, 37.
Yep, they're on page 36, 37 of the printed packet, and I have it up online here. But you can see that for fiscal year 24, we actually earned 5.39%, or up to this point, I should say, of 24. And we set the rate last May at 4%. And if you remember, we had a little bit of conversation about that last year because FY23 closed out at 3.71, but as we were looking at it, we could tell that it was trending upward, and we landed at 4, and actually it doesn't look like we lost anything by doing so, since we're well above 5 at this point. There isn't this isn't a precise thing. The board kind of looks at what are the trends, what does it look like is going to happen. I did spend some time talking with Director Villa about sort of what his crystal ball says for next fiscal year. And of course, nobody knows for certain, but we both sort of landed on if we recommend 4.5%, we don't think that that's going to be way above what it actually ends up being by the time we close out next fiscal year. So that's the staff recommendation, is to set it at 4.5, which is a 0.5% increase over the current rate. And the board can certainly do something else if they think it's a better idea. And so maybe Dan Trost.
Yeah, just the consensus has changed a lot in the last 6 months about what the Fed is going to do. And this rate really is, the Fed controls short-term rates. It's a short-term rate. So as soon as the Fed goes down a quarter, this is going to go down a quarter. The consensus now is that maybe the Fed's going to do that twice this calendar year, once or twice. That's 50 basis points. So we'd be down below 5, very likely by the end of this year. And then into next year, we have to predict whether there'll be a big slowdown or not. If there's a slowdown, it's going to go down a hell of a lot quicker. If there's not, it's going to probably stay there. So I guess I'm comfortable at 4.5 or a little lower, 4.25. But if, and I think we did talk about it, you can't change it. It's May, right? Every year.
You set it annually.
Yeah.
Right?
So 4.5 would be the very highest I'd be comfortable with based on what we think is coming.
Anybody else? Do we have a motion? Go with staff, or to go a little lower, or?
I don't want to be the only one that
No,
thinks this, but I mean, 4.25 might be a little safer. Because we're looking at a full year from today.
This is also your business. I mean,
Right,
I don't work in this area.
Yeah.
I hope to get 4.5, but hope so.
Carrie,
Yes.
can I chip in?
Yes, please.
I completely agree with Mr. Trost. The fact is the next 6 months are far more predictable than the 6 months following that, because we really don't know how inflation's going to come in toward the end of the year, what the Federal Reserve is going to do. It's possible that they could drop interest rates only once or even not at all this year. But it's also possible that by early next year, if things get in order, they could bring those rates down fairly quickly. So it's a big risk if we set it at 4.5 and those rates are down considerably more than that by then. So I would confirm that Daniel Trost's idea of dropping it to 4 1/4 is probably reasonable.
Thank you.
There's nothing that says you have to increase it at all. You could leave it at 4% as well. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
you know, like I said, nobody knows for sure, but, and obviously you two are involved in it a lot more than I am, and so.
I mean, I'm comfortable with 4 1/4. We need to try to stay close to what we're earning, and we have earned more than what we've been paying out for a while here, so I think going up a little bit makes sense. I propose 4 1/4.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion on our short-term interest rate or our interest rates for member accounts? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of 4.25 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Any nays? All right, motion passes. The next thing that we need to look at is the renewal of Kavanaugh McDonald's contract.
Yes. So. All right, so Madam Chair, in your board packet, that's the one, sorry, I'm looking across. Right
Am I in your way?
No, you're fine. In your packet is the actual copy of the renewal addendum for Kavanaugh McDonald. So as we start this round of contracts, every one of these contracts are also included in the budget request, the budget justification spreadsheet. So I guess I would just ask real quickly, do we want to take a minute and look at that budget justification and all the contracted services? Because all of these contracts are on there, and it's probably a little bit easier to look at than looking at the actual contract this way. Maybe let's do that, and then we can come back and go through each one and knock them out.
Okay.
Okay, so let me jump down to the worksheet, and I'll go to the contracted services. So right here at the top of the 62-102 category is our actuary valuation. So we've been spending $44,300 on that for the past 4 years. Without any adjustment to the price. And so we are due to renegotiate that contract. It did go up a little bit, although I will say the actuaries percent increase versus like Ice Millers or even some of the other ones is actually pretty low. I think that ended up being about a 3% increase. And they're locked into that $47,000 now for the next 4 years. So it went up a little, but it's reasonable. We did also bump up, and this isn't necessarily included in the contract that you're gonna verify, but we bumped up our budget for consulting, actuarial cost estimates, impact statements, because we are gonna be in a legislative session next fiscal year. And so those amounts come from the ad hoc rate that's in the contract, but we're just estimating, how much of that we may need as a result of whatever legislation gets introduced by various legislators. The travel for the actuary is right in the contract. That did go up. Actually, it didn't. I think what happened there was we only in the contract, we only pay for one actuary to come, and they've been sending 2. So that's why we only spend half of that amount, because they can't bill us for two. But they did ask for that to be bumped up to $1,500 per trip out here in the fall of each year, which seems reasonable. Travel expenses have gone up.
Do we share that expense with PERS since they come to know?
We do not, other than maybe they're paying for the other one to come out, because our contract only does allow us to, them to charge us for one actuary's travel. Then we at various points throughout the year we talk about GASB 67 and GASB 68. Those are reports that are actuarial heavy. I mean, our actuaries create those reports on our behalf. And that's how you determine your net pension liability, and how your various employers that have members in TRS, how they report that is through GASB 68. So those costs have been relatively stable for the last 4 or 5 years, and they're just going up slightly versus the last contract. But again, they'll be locked into that price now for 4 more years after this. That's the Kavanaugh McDonald contract. You'll also have in front of you today, at some point as an action item, approval of the Milliman contract for an actuarial audit. So every 4 year, no, every 5 years, we have an actuarial audit conducted where we have a second separate actuary come in and review all the work our actuary does on our behalf and verify that they're using the appropriate actuarial standards and that they're applying everything as they should. It gives the board a level of assurance that the actuary we utilize is doing their job the way they're supposed to do it. And so we have that budgeted for this next year. That's going to be a cost of $40,000, which is, we had this done 5 years ago. It was, I want to say $35,000. So it's up slightly. We did change companies, and the reason we did that is the actuary that did the audit previously was with GRS at that time, and had since moved to Milliman. And his familiarity with our system makes it just makes sense rather than start with somebody brand new. And he was able to work through the contracting with us. I haven't signed that contract yet, but that's one of the budget requests. Then as far as the other contracted services go, this PBI, death search, and address search services, those aren't contracts that you're going to explicitly look at or sign or approve, but they are part of our budget, and that's the service we have that runs monthly to make sure that we provide them our whole list of benefit recipients. So all of our retirees and beneficiaries that are receiving a benefit, they run it through their database and their algorithms to see if there's a possibility that they have since been deceased from the previous month. And so that's how we identify people that have died that don't self-report or their family doesn't self-report for them. So it's an important service that's in our budget. This CMS, the Twilio SMS services and send, that is our two-factor authentication we use as part of our member portal. So we are, only asking for that to remain about exactly where it was this last year. CMS is Jim Cairns. That's the person that Carrie and Elliot met with this week to do the my performance evaluation. He's also the one that does our he helps us facilitate our full-on strategic planning. We don't have a full-on session this August. It's more just a brief overview. So most of that cost is just going to be my performance appraisal and maybe a little bit of work on the strategic plan, but probably not. So we knocked that down to about half of what it was previously. And then from there on, you kind of just get into the sort of the normal things, normal budget categories.
Right, because
The Drake Law Firm. What's it on there?
it's down a little further.
Is it? Oh yeah, right here, sorry. Okay, yeah. So the Drake Law Firm, this is the contract that actually is for Carrie's signature instead of mine. It's in your board packet. And their services are necessary, even though we spent nothing on them this year, they are necessary for us to budget for, because if we have a contested case matter that comes or goes, if we have a case that goes to contested case matter, at that point, Denise represents the retirement system as a whole, I guess you'd say, where the Drake Law Firm will come in and represent the TRS Board specifically. So she can't do both. So we do have to have that available. And we've been using the Drake Law Firm now for like 8 years, 9 years?
Oh, yeah.
Quite a while. When we do need them, and they provide good service on our behalf. So we definitely recommend approval of that. Ice Miller is similar. That's our tax counsel. It's very specialized. Attorneys, as far as their specialty is IRS code, and so we didn't budget or haven't spent anything on them this year, but when we need to, if you look at the hourly rates in their contract, it is expensive, but we use it sparingly. We only use it if we feel it's absolutely necessary, and when we do, it's always well worth it, because they do a really good job of providing the exact level of documentation or details we need. And they provide that service on behalf of most all of the other big public plans in the country.
Yeah, and they provide a lot of information at no cost, that they, bulletins and that come out every month, or you know, if there's a change in federal law, they give us a synopsis and how it applies to us and that, so we get our money's worth from them.
So that, I think that covers all the contracts. If you want to go back then to the action items.
Yeah.
So I think we were on J.
Yes, we were. The renewal of the Kavanaugh McDonald contract, and I will need a separate, we have to approve each one of these, so a separate action item for each one. So I need a motion to renew Kavanaugh McDonald.
Could we
Yes,
ask questions first,
Oh.
please?
sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sean, I'm wondering, since the Board of Investments did this, how often do we try to renegotiate these contracts or look at different providers?
So you broke up a little bit. So we did, some of them are, I guess we could look for a different provider if you're speaking to like Ice Miller or the Drake Law Firm. However, I don't know that there's anybody that's going to be as qualified or as good necessarily as Ice Miller. I mean, Ice Miller's contract went up the most out of all of these. And theirs is an annual contract, so it's not like a 4-year contract like Kavanaugh McDonald is. So, I mean, each year we renew our Ice Miller contract, but I mean, Ice Miller is also probably the most respected firm in the industry, I would say. I mean, I don't know who else we would look to.
Well, and there aren't a whole lot of firms that provide tax counsel services to entities like TRS. I mean, they're not the only one for sure, but they're all going to be priced at similar rates. And the issue is, we describe this to the the Legal Services Review Committee every year. There is no way we could hire internally somebody with this level of expertise. And there is nobody in the state of Montana outside with the expertise either. I mean, so, you know, our issue with Ice Miller would be going from them to another similar entity at very similar costs. And they have been our counsel since 1993. They filed our first qualification letter for us. They've drafted a lot of our statutory revision language and things like that. So, I mean, to some extent, their background in TRS specifically is substantial, and the learning curve with somebody new would be tremendous as well.
I get that on Ice Miller, but I'm wondering about Kavanaugh McDonald. Aren't there other actuaries out there that are capable?
So on Kavanaugh McDonald specifically, again, that's a 4-year contract, so they had no adjustment at all for the previous 4 years. They were hired prior to my arrival at TRS, because we used to use Milliman. They were unable to do the indemnification language that we were required to have in our contracts through state procurement. So when they dropped out, I don't know for sure if TRS did an RFP when they hired Kavanaugh McDonald.
We did.
Okay, Carrie's saying they did. Kavanaugh McDonald came through. I can tell you that if we were to go with the new actuary, there's a big lift those first couple years for programming and getting the data in a format that we can upload it to them, efficiently and accurately. That's why, like, when we do the actuarial audit, I mean, $40,000 to get a 100, I don't even think it's maybe a 70-page report. Seems like an awful lot of money, but there's a lot of connections that need to be made. And if you look at what Kavanaugh McDonald's charging us to do the actual value, the full valuation, which actually deals with all of our data, it's only $44,000. The $40,000 actual audit is not a full replication. That's just making sure that they look at test cases and make sure that we're utilizing, our actuaries utilizing the principles correctly and that the math all works. So, I mean, I'm not gonna say there aren't other actuarial firms, but I also would say I don't think that Kavanaugh McDonald is gouging us in any way. And some of that, I mean, I know a lot more history about the administrative fees that are actually being lowered at BOI, and most of that is between BOI and Department of Commerce. It's not really BOI and their contractors.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and
It's a good question to ask, though, thank you. But yeah, I do remember when we went through the RFP, Kavanaugh McDonald came in exceptionally, but it was expensive for the first couple of years then to try to have that all replicated. And we really liked the guy that we were working with at Milliman, that man who would come in every time. He was, I don't know,
Can't think of his
he
favorite.
did
I
an
can't
entire
remember
study
his
for
name.
us about it.
Mark Alleman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Solomon, yes.
And, but yeah, it ended up costing us more than we thought by just taking on a new actuary, so.
We actually had not anticipated changing actuaries when we put that RFP out.
Yeah, we
And
did
then
not.
Milliman didn't submit a proposal because we were requiring substantial insurance coverage and they wanted to self-fund, and the state of Montana wouldn't
Allow that.
Allow that, yeah.
allow that, so.
And I was gonna ask too, the increase, and it's just I guess we don't really have the before and after on, or maybe we do, on the valuation itself, but just the hourly for ad hoc services is up 15 to 20% per hour for everybody across the board, but that's over 4 years, that's not.
It's over 4 years. And the one thing I can tell you about Kavanaugh McDonald is, so those ad hoc rates, so every time I call Todd and I talk to him for 20 minutes about a question I have, he should be charging us for that, and he never does. And they're very responsive. Those rates really only apply if we ask for a cost impact statement or they develop a report. A lot of attorneys, if you call and you talk to them for a half hour, you're gonna pay for that full half hour. Our actuaries are not like that.
They bill in 10-minute increments.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Just be sure to email me anytime you want, and then you're like, whoa, that's what that costs?
Right.
$200 for an email?
The other thing I think is interesting and noteworthy is that the paralegal for Ice Miller makes more than the head attorney for Drake.
Yeah. But again, we don't utilize their
You don't use
services
them.
very often.
I am highly suspicious the paralegal doesn't actually get paid that much.
Oh, right. No, that's
Yeah.
the billing, but.
All right, and I will take questions in between each one of these if there's any more as well, so sorry about that, Dee. But I'm looking for a motion to renew Kavanaugh McDonald's contract.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion about that contract? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of renewal of Kavanaugh McDonald indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. Any noes? I heard everybody say yes, so I should probably go through the noes anyways. The second thing I'm looking for is a motion for Ice Miller's contract renewal.
So motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on Ice Miller's contract? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of renewing Ice Miller's contract indicate by saying aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Any nays? And now a motion for the renewal of Drake Law Firm's contract.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of renewal of Drake Law Firm's contract indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Any nays? Motion passes. And finally, a motion for Milliman's actuarial audit contract.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of renewing Milliman's actuarial audit contract indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Any nays? Okay. Excellent. All those motions have passed. The next action item on our agenda is the fiscal year 2025 TRS budget request. We should take some time at this point to ask any questions. We went through the contracted services. Our budget committee has met on this and gone through it line item by line item, but we don't want to, if there are any questions, any concerns, Nolan is here, Sean is here for the budget. Let's ask now. I appreciate what you said earlier, Dan. Chamberlain is our admin expense percentage. It's incredible when you talk to other places around the country as well. I mean, it's just, we're well below that 1.5% of what we can charge, or what we can be at, or half of that. So I think we should be proud of our staff that works really hard for our budget and, is very good with the teachers' money in the state.
I can just touch on just the highlights. Basically, there is either a 4% or $1.50 raise, for each, that was a legislative raise for each employee in the state. So that was passed, and that's where, so our personal services went up about $130,000, the budget, and that, so the majority of the increase in the overall budget is that 130,000. I mean, the overall budget went up about 200,000 budget request, and 130,000 of that was the personal services. So that's kind of a main highlight of the increase.
And honestly, I'm glad that you guys got that 4% increase. It was a nice gift not gift, but you have to work hard for that. But when we didn't have to figure that out, I love that.
Just a quick question on the M-Trust amortization expense. How many years are left on the bulk of it from the original? Do we know how many years we have left of that amortization?
The bulk is already amortized out.
Yeah, it's completely amortized. So we had the two phases, the first phase was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the two phases, the phase 2 and phase 3 are completely amortized. Phase 3 was completely amortized as of November of 2023, which is in this fiscal year 24, but it's as
So
of November.
Going forward, are those expenses or are they capitalized when we add a new module or something?
No, now they're now they're expensed.
Okay.
Any new ones are expensed now, but,
So this will fall off for next year. We won't see the.
Correct.
Okay.
correct.
All right, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and so, and then anything new, we're doing, as an enhancements, but not a full-blown phase of a project, and we're budgeting around 90 or 95,000 for AMA, which is Alpha Munskard, our programmer, and then about 120,000 for test lead and project management. So it's all staying within that about $220,000 realm for any enhancements that we're doing from one year to the next.
Okay.
If we ever end up at a point where we need to do something drastically more than that, then I think we would do it as a phase, and then we probably would capitalize it and amortize it out.
Any other comments, questions, concerns?
So then the only other, I think for every site, I tried to just give you sort of the narrative description in your board packet of each of the main categories. And I think they're all summarized there. So hopefully you've had a chance to read that. Overall, we're about 4.79% increase from last fiscal year to the upcoming fiscal year. You all know, even if we were doing absolutely nothing different, which we're really not doing much different, just inflation, 4.79% from year over year is not bad in this current environment.
especially with a 4% increase
Yeah.
in pay.
Yep.
Well, I'm looking for then a motion for the TRS budget request.
I move approval.
A second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on our budget request? Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the fiscal year 2025 TRS budget request indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Alright,
Chair votes aye. Any nays? Motion passes. All right, the next thing is our out-of-state travel request, and Sean was going to take that.
Yes, so thank you, Madam Chair. Remember, Younger asked this morning about the NCTR trustee workshop and where we can find information about that. And so like I told him, it's nctr.org is the website. I'll actually email all of you a link to the summer workshop agenda and sort of information to see, so you have a chance to look at it. What we need to do today is just approve. Typically what we do is we approve up to a certain amount of board members to attend these conferences. Some years we've said up to 6 to attend the trustee workshop, and it's almost never happens that everybody goes. I don't think it ever has, but we've had 3 or 4 go at the same time. And I think, were you part of that?
Mhm.
Yeah, and it was actually really nice,
Went to
right?
Boston, it was
Yeah.
great, because then we could really have good discussions there, and
Yeah, so this upcoming summer, it's at UC Berkeley, July 21 through the 24th. And like I said, I will send each of you, I'll send everybody on the board a link to that agenda and more information. But for today's business, we just need to decide, how many might be able to go and how many we want to approve travel for.
and this is a good time to just, I would just say, like, they do it at Berkeley, they've done it at Harvard. I mean, the quality of the instruction and the people that they bring in is top notch. I mean, you feel like you're at a college course, you feel like you get a lot of chances to work with panels, to ask questions. It's the NCTR, the trustee one, I feel like is better than the actual NCTR conference, but I don't know, the last time I went, I got a lot out of it. And the only reason I would say that is because we do not do our own investing. And so at NCTR, the main conference, there's a lot of investment stuff. However, I did look at the agenda for Berkeley in the summer, and the whole first day is on investments. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't know about our investing strategies, and especially somebody like you. I mean, it has been eye-opening for me, just, to know about things like BlackRock, whatever they're called, BlackRock, and different, people coming in with ESGs and things like that, which, okay, people are gonna come to you and talk to you about those types of things, so you need to know what our system does, what our things do. And so just knowing what's out there is a good thing. So even though I used to say I didn't want to go to things about the investing, now I do. So it's a lot, all these things, but it's also really good instruction.
Yeah.
Coming from someone who really appreciates good instruction.
And you all just approved, your out-of-state travel for board anyway. So now it's just a matter of how many do we want to approve going to the actual trustee workshop?
So the trustee one, the summer one is in Cal Berkeley. Do we know where the October one is? I haven't seen anything yet
I
either.
believe it's in Atlanta.
Okay.
At the Intercontinental in Atlanta, I'm pretty sure. And that'll be in.
It is Atlanta? Okay, thank you. Anybody interested at this point in the NCTR summer conference?
what was the dates again?
July 21 through the 24th.
I'm not going to be around, but I hope somebody goes.
Sorry, SAM Administrator Institute, so
Is it?
I would not be able to attend that.
Hold on, I got apps galore. time. On 23rd to the 24th, correct?
21st.
21st, okay.
Sunday. through
Madam
Wednesday.
Chair, I'd very much like to go. I have to discuss that with my wife. We have a family conflict, which I'd be happy to get out of.
She just may not be happy to have you get out of it, right?
You know, fortunately, she's not here to hear this discussion, but I will discuss it with her. and let you know.
Okay,
I'd have to try to go in October. If I was gonna go, I'd have to look into that future-wise, but I'm in South Dakota that week working.
that's what happened to me, so. All right, well, we know of maybe possibly one for the summer workshop, which hopefully that would happen, and then possibly a couple more for so we're fine with our budget request.
We are, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all we're looking at for this meeting today is just the summer workshop,
Yeah.
so. Yep.
All right, well, I need a motion then to approve the out-of-state travel request for the workshop and the customer service workshop, which is for Darla.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, concerns? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. All right, so just that final thing, next meeting, August 2nd. And we're not far behind, and that was our big crux of our meeting right there, so we'll take a quick, let's be back at 10:20 from a break. And we are on to the board training from Denise.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we are doing training today on policy of non-discrimination in employment and provision of services. And I'm going to start in kind of an unusual place today. I'm going to ask a question first. How many of you get non-discrimination training, sexual harassment training, that sort of thing in your other professional lives? Okay, then we will train primarily on the policy. I was just going to tell you that, we train here on the policy, and there's a bit of a change. The policy now, we're only doing this training with our board because the state of Montana, Department of Administration, Human Resources Office now provides annual non-discrimination ADA training for our staff as an online service. It's actually, I've just recently taken it. It's very good training, so we're not going to do, it's a little more in depth, and I was just going to say, you would all have access to that too, if you wanted to, as employees of the state, but elsewhere, you're probably good to go. So, for purposes of the board and the policy internally for TRS, this covers requirements for non-discrimination, both with respect to employment practices of TRS and with respect to our provision of services to our members, beneficiaries, that sort of thing. The state has a very large policy, which is incorporated by reference with this policy. It's much broader and more inclusive of all of the things that you received training on elsewhere. Our adoption of this policy does not supersede that. It incorporates it only to the extent that this policy would be more protective or more specific, but it really is not. So really and truly, it's the state policy overall that applies to us. This is just there is something in Montana law called the Governmental Code of Fair Practices. It's cross-referenced on this policy. It is sort of an administrative provision under the human rights law. Cases decided under it have said you're not compliant with the human rights law of the state of Montana unless you have a policy and you train your employees. You haven't done what you need to do in order to be compliant with the law. Even if you are otherwise, your conduct is compliant with the law, you have to have the policy and do the training to meet the requirements. So The non-discrimination policy covers a couple of things, the things that you must not do first and foremost, right? Discrimination is prohibited, retaliation is prohibited. And we'll go over, and all of these relate to protected class status, to people who belong to protected classes or are believed or presumed to belong to protected classes. On the first page there, practically is what constitute protected classes for TRS purposes. Some of these are under federal law, some of them are under federal and state law, some of them are only under state law, but in total, an individual is a member of a protected class if their actual or perceived status is having a characteristic based upon which discrimination is prohibited, kind of a circular definition there, including race, color, national origin, age, physical or mental disability, marital status, religion, creed, sex, sexual orientation, political beliefs, genetic information, veteran status, culture, social origin or condition, or ancestry. And the classification of sexual orientation includes sexual identity. So Montana law, federal law, one thing that I will tell you here, age discrimination for Montana purposes is a little different. If you receive training that's primarily on the federal law, that's anybody age 40 or older, you can't discriminate against them. Montana law, you can't discriminate against anybody at any age. So substantively, you can't deny somebody a job or that because they're too young either, as long as they meet the qualifications and non-discriminatory criteria for the position. So TRS's policy is we will not tolerate discrimination or harassment based on an individual's protected class status, either in the hiring or employment of TRS staff or in the provision of TRS services. And discrimination for employment purposes is disadvantaging somebody with respect to the terms, conditions, and privileges of employment. So, and that applies to when they're applying for a job, with respect to their tenure in a position, advancement, raises, all of those kinds of things. You can't make any of those determinations based on a protected class status or a perception of a protected class status. So we recruit, appoint, assign, train, evaluate, and promote personnel on the basis of merit and qualifications without regard to an individual's protected class status, and that's under any of the protected class statuses. The prohibition against retaliation is specifically related to somebody opposing a discriminatory practice or conduct or participating in a remediatory process, either reporting discrimination, filing a grievance, filing a court claim, testifying on behalf of themselves or another person in a hearing, anything that's in participation of a claim to assuage discrimination. Harassment is not necessarily conduct that results in an adverse employment determination, like not getting a promotion or not getting a raise, but is conduct toward a person, comments, actions, stalking. I mean, there's a whole broad range of things that fall into the category of harassment that would make it untenable for a reasonable person to continue in the position or to continue productively in the position. And frankly, with discrimination, that's the largest body of case law you're going to find is in the harassment arena. You're not allowed to retaliate against somebody, and TRS doesn't do it, for participation for opposing either discriminatory conduct or participating in remediation of discriminatory conduct. We are also legally required to provide notice to people about where and how they can make a claim of discriminatory conduct or retaliation. The specifics of what those what the notice or the claim process is on page 3 of 4 of the policy. I have not looked, I probably should look, we have to have those posted internally in a place that is regularly traveled by staff and the public, because non-discrimination, of course, applies to people who are here who are not employees as well. Again, we have to have a program of a policy and a program of training. Our policy specifically says, I believe it does, that we can utilize the training of other entities, state HR, human resources, state HR division, whatever the case may be, to provide that training. So again, our staff are getting that training online through Department of Admin HR, or state HR probably. We're also required to, by statute, to make sure that any third parties that we do work with comply with non-discrimination, with the non-discrimination provisions of Montana law as well. So in all of the contracts that we looked at today to approve renewal of them, you saw something attached to them called a third-party agent agreement. That does a number of things. It moves requirements for security and the like down the line, but and protects confidential information. But it also includes, no, that's probably not, I take that back. It would be in the body of the contract. The primary contract will include the provisions that say you nor any subcontractor or assignee, whatever the case may be, will violate Montana. It lays it out in greater detail. So everybody we contract with to do services on our behalf sign up for protections under the Montana Human Rights Act as well, which again is frankly quite a lot more. There are many things that we, marital status is one of the things that's not protected under federal law, that's protected under the Montana law. There are a couple of the other protected classes. I guess any questions? I mean, we could go into specifically law in the various areas if you have questions, but since you're all getting training elsewhere, you might not feel the need to do that. No? Okay.
All set out. Check.
I mean, I have to
I'll
go
check.
through it for Lego training through them for robotics competition. When I sign up every other year.
Yeah,
So I had to be vetted just even for that
Yeah.
online. Plus, I go into other schools and I have to have background checks in other states.
yeah.
So
Well, I can't, I mean, do you not get training at least every 3 years through
That's cool.
your school?
yeah, we in
Do
fact,
it every year.
yeah, as I say, we have at least one every year. Whether it's
Yeah.
large staff or small
Online.
staffs in different realms, places, it comes up.
And they go into greater detail on the specifics of,
Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh, yeah.
Awkward videos.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, very learning experience every year for sure.
yeah.
So,
Good. Well, I assumed, I mean, we've always assumed that you were getting, the in-depth training somewhere else. But like I said, the state presentation takes about an hour. It's online. There's 6 sections and a short quiz after, and it's actually a very rapid, the EEO ADA coordinator for the state of Montana is very good, and he narrates it's available to you if you're interested, but probably not.
Can't wait.
All
And
right.
just legal counsel summary report.
Okay, quick and easy. We have no pending contested case matters and none coming down the end that I'm aware of at this point. So, I hate to keep saying that. It just, I know, but it's just tempting the contested case gods to keep saying we have none. But- So unless there are other questions about what I do.
Yeah, this is a good time to ask, and if you're not sure, but we haven't, so when I first started, we did not have an attorney on staff. And then Denise was hired, which was nice, and there had been someone prior to Denise that was like partial, she was, what was her
We
name?
had Ally
Viv.
Bogan.
Ally.
Yep, and then we had,
Well, you had Viv and Dave
Viv.
Oler.
that was Pamela, and,
Dave Oler was the
Dave,
one that
yeah.
preceded me, but that was when, yeah, I was hired as an attorney with the Department of Admin, and TRS was one of my 3 clients in that.
I'm assuming the local employees in the building have a point person that is appointed for the reporting process?
For,
Or if,
discriminate for-
Yeah, any sort of discrimination comes up or
well,
accusation too?
it's not necessarily a point person, but they're advised that, and if anybody ever comes and asks me the question,
Right.
they should go to their supervisor first and then up the chain of command, unless they're not comfortable doing that, unless they have a reason for not going through the chain of command, they can always go to the Department of Admin, Human Resources Department, State HR, and of course, the law actually allows them to directly file a legal action. But, you know, I mean, certainly we advise people that, you know, you're better off, you get better outcomes because issues can be addressed and handled. But a lot of times, people aren't comfortable going up their direct chain of command because it's somebody in their chain of command who, you know, purportedly is the problem, so.
Right. Cause we have a coordinator in a district that all those go through. So I was just curious, in our district, I'm not sure how other districts handle it.
Yeah, we don't have an HR person in the office,
Right.
so,
We do have an assigned HR, they call it like a business partner. And everyone here knows who they are because they either have been here since she was hired or if they're brand new, that's who coordinates all their training. And so they would be encouraged to go through them. That is our HR staff.
Okay.
We pay D of A for their service.
Right.
And they know Lindsay's who they would work with.
Okay.
And then, I mean, it sounded like you were maybe referring to like your union rep.
No, it's an actual district.
I was gonna clarify.
Right, yeah, no, it's an actual district, it's an administrator, it's an actual
Okay.
district person, it wouldn't be a union. I
Okay,
mean, if I needed to, obviously you can, you have your Weingart Act, obviously you can ask for someone to be with you in a meeting, so that, but this is just like a point person, like if I have an issue I
yeah.
can talk to, and that person handles the, you know, all the communication and investigation and all that we've gone through a number of times.
And
but I'm just curious.
If we got to the point, I mean, if somebody had they would end up with a D of A HR to coordinate an investigation or that sort of thing. But, yeah.
Denise, hi, this is Dan Chamberlain. I have a quick question. You know, I almost had to grin a little bit when you were reading off the list of reasons for not allowing discrimination, which has expanded mightily over the years, now to include genetic background even, which pretty much is inclusive of all of us. I'm wondering when we'll get to the point where it might be useful to think in terms of the affirmative, meaning what is allowable discrimination, which seems to be limited only to job qualifications. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and well, yeah, I mean, there really is nothing that doesn't, of people's beliefs, of people's physical status or makeup or that sort of thing that doesn't fit into one of these categories. So yes, You can not hire people or discriminate against people if that's what you want to call it, because they don't meet job qualifications, or in the ADA arena, you can actually decline to provide reasonable accommodations, et cetera, or provide accommodations because it causes an undue hardship to the employer. So, really and truly, you would still be taking sort of adverse action against somebody based on a physical or a mental disability, but those are really the only sort of ways you can discriminate between people in workplaces.
Yes. Thank you for that response. And if you'll all forgive me, I have to go upstairs and let my dog out for one moment. I'll be right back.
All right. So Tammy, we can move on then to you, to the application and benefit adjustments.
So Madam Chair, members of the board, in your packet for informational purposes are the list of retirement applications that have been processed by the active and retired group since February. Grand total of 62 recipients. We are approaching the summer months where a bulk of our 600 plus retirements happen. And so stay tuned. You'll have a lot more in your next August meeting. But if anyone has any questions, as far as understanding the employer types for those that are new to the board, if you look at employer type, CC OL is for community colleges, COOP is for cooperatives, SCDI is for school districts, STAG is for state agencies, and then universities. So in totality, 62 with an average term pay of a little over $4,000 and average monthly benefit of a little over $1,100, and the average age about almost 61 years of age, and service a little over 15. And that's on the last page, on page 82. All right,
Thank you. All right, last thing on the agenda before our closed meeting is the long-range planning, which is our strategic planning worksheet. That's what we were talking about earlier today when we were talking about Sean's evaluation, and this is kind of what we use as a board to stay focused. And if you have ideas or suggestions, will come up in our August meeting. We're not developing a new one this year, but what we will do is kind of refine this and make sure things are where they need to be.
All right, so Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm not gonna go through every line item. I mean, certainly we will do that in August. I did put in red font areas that have been updated since our last meeting. And so the first one of those is implement a responsive web design. And Darla and Jen are both working on that. Jen, I think, has taken the lead on that. We are using a little bit of contracted services with state information technology. They have the expertise to make this conversion for us, at least the templates, and then we will fill in the actual content. But it's about halfway there, so I suspect by either the August or October meeting, we'll probably be able to look at our new redesigned responsive website. And then the next update has to do with system security and identity verification. John Noble touched on this a little bit as part of his PRISM update that he gave, and some of the questions he got from board members sort of led him to talk about the DocuSign ID verification. That is part of what you all approved in your budget, or in the budget request. And so we are looking to not only just use the two-factor authentication, but also DocuSign ID verification for instances where their money is going to change hands. And so the first process that will get introduced to will be the online withdrawals. And once that's done, it will completely eliminate the need to print out a piece of paper and have it notarized. And with that, then we've sort of walked away from the idea of remote notarization, because we can use a service like this that actually ends up being cheaper and hopefully just as good or better anyway. So that is, I guess the update there was it was sort of up in the air for a while, because we knew our contract, the state contract, was going to expire and it's an enterprise contract. And so we really couldn't get any numbers on this until just the last about 3 to 4 weeks. But finally that contract's in place. Our numbers are firm, and it should be exactly what it ends up costing us next year. And so, in addition to cost, we didn't know for sure if the ID verification was going to be part of what the state contracted for, and it ended up being that it was. So that's all good news for us. Let's see, the last one here. So this I updated since our last meeting. The last of the 8 I scheduled for mass meetings is complete. I do have a 9th meeting that I'll go to this fall. So that is, for all intents and purposes, basically is done. Let's see, the next one was continue with the surveys. Oh, so we did complete our survey. The next member survey won't happen until 2025. I highlighted this because, and I touched on it earlier, these are important, and I do share these results both with the legislature as well as when I go out and do my mass meetings. It is good to have data on our actual population of members rather than just always speak to national averages and things like that, because it sort of eliminates some of the noise as far as, well, this study says this or this study says that. When we ask our members directly what they like, what they value, it's nice to have those numbers. Jen was hired in December. That is old news at this point. She was at our last meeting. And then research. Oh, so on this research available option for TRS to support or promote deferred comp systems for teachers. This has been on our strategic plan now for several years, and it's always kind of a tough one because we don't actually offer a deferred comp plan or a 401k type of plan. However, Impera does, and so I did get a really good one-pager information sheet from Impera that I incorporated into my mass presentations, and I provided that information to all the superintendents that attended those meetings, which also included the direct email and phone number for Impera's deputy director if they were interested in setting up one of those deferred comp plans. So some of them did express that they were glad that I was able to give them that information. That's really all I can do, is provide the information, then they have to take it from there on their own. But it did work, I think. I mean, Elliot was at was it North Central Mass meeting where we talked about it.
Is there any data saying that any school districts are moving towards this, or do we know if there are?
No, I don't have any data. I mean, a lot of districts already have a 403B plan.
Yep.
This 457B that Impera offers is available to them. Even if they do, they can switch if they want to.
Yeah.
And it's at no cost. So I really don't have any data other than it's been a priority of this board to encourage members to have a third leg of retirement, which would be in addition to Social Security and TRS. And short of, I certainly don't want to go to the legislature and ask permission to set up a deferred comp plan. We don't want any part of that, but Impera does have one, and it's available, and that's really all I can do is promote it.
Yeah, can we get any information back from them to say how many districts are taking advantage of this, or?
From Impera? Yeah, I could inquire with them to see how many.
Yeah, I would be interested to know.
Yeah.
How many districts are taking advantage of that versus when I arrived in Shelby. I'll use that as the example. We did not have one, and so I went out and I found a local person that offers that, and so then that individual comes in and does that. But I had no idea about Impera when I first got to Shelby.
Right.
I don't know how long that system has been around, or that opportunity.
Well, it's been available, yeah.
But is it just for Impera members, not like teachers' retirement members?
No, it's.
You can do it for any.
Yeah,
And counties can implement it too for county employees. Yeah, it's really a great program. It's incredibly cheap. There's really good investment options. 403B plans came from the annuity space years ago. That's changed a little bit. They're a little bit more like a 401k now, but historically they were tax shelter annuities, which are quite expensive and generally have very few and poor choices for investments. So this is a really good option if you want to go after it.
Yeah. So I definitely can get to Impera, the number of school districts that are participating. I won't necessarily, unless I were to inquire directly, I won't have any idea how many school districts are offering like a 403B from a private.
It might be a good idea if you could get the information on which districts do that, if it's valuable to have those districts be kind of the spokesperson when you go out to your meetings. Hey, this is in this region, this district is actually utilizing this.
Right.
So that they have a on-the-ground contact person, especially with how many superintendents are turning over right now.
Yeah.
And I think they're a lot of times the drivers for those extra things.
Well, to be fair, the 403Bs are free to the district too. It's just a better deal for the teachers if they do this.
Yeah.
Or better, it's an option anyways.
Okay.
I think it could be worthwhile.
Sure. All right, and with that, Madam Chair, that's the conclusion of my strategic plan update.
All right, any public comment in any of this? We don't have any public, so there we go. Closed meeting at this point for our disability application. Let's open the meeting back up so we can vote on this. Are we good, John? Okay. I need a motion on the disability request for Jamie E. Williams.
I move approval?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of approval of Jamie Williams' disability request indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. The motion passes. And another chance for public comment. And then I need a motion to adjourn. We are doing good.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Right.
Aye.
Aye. Safe travels.
Thank you.